Welcome to Hotline Live with CAWC, Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. We're here today to talk about teens and domestic violence, how we can communicate with them, what we should look for, and how we can help them. I'm Angeline Graham, family trauma therapist at Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. Thank you for joining me today. First, I wanted to start out with talking about teens and domestic violence. What does that look like? Teens can experience domestic violence much as adults do, in two ways. They can experience it, one, as a witness at home. They can also experience it themselves within relationships as they begin to date. First, we'll talk a little bit about what it looks like when teens witness domestic violence at home. When teens witness domestic violence at home, they can act out and they can show symptoms of trauma much like younger children do. For instance, a teen who is witnessing domestic violence at home might have lower grades at school because they have difficulty concentrating. They may feel anxious because they're not sure what's to come. They may be worried, and they may also have feelings of guilt. Worried about, can I help? Is there something I should have done? Could I possibly protect my parent who is being harmed? Children and teens who experience domestic violence often experience lower grades, trouble concentrating, and trouble engaging with their peers. That may come out in forms of fighting, not wanting to be social because they don't want to seem different from their peers. One way to assist children and teens who are experiencing domestic violence at home, even if you just think they may be experiencing domestic violence at home, is to simply engage with them, talk with them, see how they're feeling, give them a safe place to express themselves. If you're not sure what to do, you can always call an organization such as Connections for Abused Women and Their Children, and we can help. That number, if you would like to call, is 773-278-4566, where we can assist you more and give you more information. Teens also are often beginning to date once they are in the high school age range. Once that happens, we have to be aware of certain things so that they don't fall into a cycle of abuse themselves. The cycle of domestic violence for teens can often look much the same as it does for adults. For adults, the cycle of abuse can start with a honeymoon stage where things are wonderful, they are fun, there's love, and then it can go into a tension building stage. We can think of this much as we think of a storm where the clouds start to gather. In the tension building stage, you can feel the tension in the air, you can feel a fight starting to brew, and then there is the explosion stage. In the explosion stage, this is where the actual violence takes place, whether that violence be physical, emotional, sexual, financial. Any of these types of violence can take place within the explosion phase. It often then circles back into the honeymoon stage where there are apologies and things begin to cycle back around to tension building. For teens, this can often look the same in their relationships. They can experience situations where they are happy, excited, glad to be in a new relationship. And then things suddenly start to change. Tensions start to build. It's difficult to communicate. Fights start to happen. And then we get into the explosion stage. The earlier in the relationship, often the longer the cycle takes to go along. What I have seen in my work is that the longer the relationship, the shorter the cycle gets, meaning that we see quicker phases of going from tension to explosion, back to honeymoon and around again for teenagers. Part of this may be the constant engagement that teenagers have with each other. They are constantly around each other, even though they do not live together. If they go to school together, they see each other every day for most of their day. And then after that, they are also able to speak via phone, via social media. So the constant engagement can often lead to quicker cycles through the cycle of violence. In addition, teenagers also have less ability to handle strong emotions as they are still learning and growing as children. Therefore, it can be difficult for them to manage feelings such as lust, jealousy, anger, resentment, feeling hurt, and so these cycles can go through a little bit quicker for them because they often go through mood changes and emotions faster than adults do. In addition to the constant engagement that they see each other so often in school, as I just spoke about, there's also the part about social media, which we have to be very aware of. Social media can often add to domestic violence for teens. For teens who engage in social media, they often will regulate or attempt to regulate how their partners engage on social media. For instance, I have seen many teens who will tell their partners, or their partners have told them, no, you may not talk to that person on social media. Why is this person liking your page? Why liking your picture on social media? Why is this person commenting on social media? These are signs of strong jealousy, which have often become the norm of teenage life nowadays. Therefore, it's important to talk to teens about how they feel. Are they comfortable with this? Do they want their partners to regulate how they engage online? Is this even someone who they know, or is this just a reason to bring up a fight or to be jealous? If a teen is feeling like they cannot speak to their partner, that again is another sign of teenage domestic violence. For instance, if a teen feels as though, if I talk to my partner, if I talk to my boyfriend or my girlfriend, I'm afraid that they're going to blow up, they're going to get angry, it's going to be a fight, and I'm scared to have to deal with that. These are signs that we should be wary of if a teen is feeling this way about engaging with their partner. Again, social media is also a way to track a partner's moves. One of the things that can sometimes happen in domestic violence, whether the relationship is still ongoing or has ended, is stalking. And cyber stalking is a very effective way for abusive partners to keep up and keep tabs on what their partner or ex-partner is currently doing. Teenagers who check into places, meaning that they label where they are at that time and who they are with, can easily be tracked by anyone who has access to their social media pages to see where they are and where they can be found. This can often lead to dangerous situations for teenagers who are in domestic violence relationships or who have attempted to leave domestic violence relationships, because it leaves them very vulnerable to being easily found by someone whom they may not want to engage with. Therefore, it's very important to talk to teens about how much information they are putting online and how they can regulate who can see their pages and who they accept, to make sure that they are keeping safe tabs on their social media pages and not leaving themselves more vulnerable access to someone who is abusive towards them. In addition to social media, teenagers also may sometimes feel trapped. They may feel like they have no one to speak with about things that are happening in their relationships. This can happen for many reasons. One reason is shaming. Shaming can often occur to adults as well, but for teenagers, this can be a little bit more volatile because, again, this constant engagement that they have, constantly surrounded by their peers for several hours throughout the day. Therefore, they may feel very self-conscious about telling someone, even their friends, that something negative is happening in their relationship, for fear that someone will judge them, for fear that someone will even laugh at them, not want to help them, and so this fear can sometimes be increased for teenagers. Therefore, it's again important to make teens feel comfortable, as though they have a safe place to talk about what's truly happening to them in their relationships. Another thing that may happen again is that teenagers may also feel as though this is normal. Relationships with violence, with name calling, with abuse can seem normal to them for various reasons. They may have witnessed it in the home, they may have witnessed it through a friend, they may have witnessed it on television. Often I have gone to high schools and spoken with teenagers about how many of them have witnessed domestic violence. Once I began to ask them who has seen it in their neighborhood, who has seen it on television, who's seen it in the hallway. Most of the time, about 100% of the kids have raised their hands within the classroom and have seen it somewhere. So even if they are not witnessing domestic violence at home, it's important to talk to teens about what domestic violence is. It is any relationship where abuse takes place, where power is given to one person in the relationship over another person in the relationship. For instance, again, if there is one person in a relationship who does not feel comfortable communicating to their partner, if there is a person in a relationship who feels physically vulnerable to their partner, if there is a person in a relationship who feels financially obligated to their partner or in debt of their partner. For instance, someone who controls their teenage partner's bus pass to control where they can travel throughout the city can be a form of teenage financial domestic violence. Or a teen who has more access to money than most teens do may use gifts to entice someone to stay within a relationship. Teenagers who often are worried about image and blending in and fitting in with their peers may be easily enticed by gifts such as this. Therefore, again, it's important to engage with teens, help them to figure out what their boundaries are, where they feel safe at in a relationship, and if this is a safe relationship for them. One way to tell if this is a safe relationship is to ask them, who do they feel like is in control in the relationship? If they can say no one, or they can say we both have equal control, that's great. If they automatically say, no, my partner has most of the control, that's a sign for worry, and that's a sign that we need to engage more with that teen. In addition, teens need, again, examples of healthy relationships because they are seeing so many examples of unhealthy relationships in various places, often from multiple sources. Therefore, it's important to show them signs of what a healthy relationship is. So what does the healthy relationship look like for a teenager? This can vary by several different things. For instance, it can vary about what is allowed in that teenager's home or culture. It can also vary by what that teenager is interested in at the moment. So to start with, it's good to start with, well, what is okay for you right now? Does that mean what is allowed for you? Are you able to date? Is someone holding that over your head that you have been dating and that's not something that's necessarily allowed? It's important to keep an open communication with a teen who may be in a domestic violence relationship, even if it seems as though they may find themselves in trouble if they are honest. These are the situations that may leave them potentially especially vulnerable. Another way to see if a teen can recognize a healthy relationship is to talk about how they engage with each other. Do they show positive affection towards each other? Or does the teen feel like there's too much affection? Or I don't feel comfortable when my partner shows me affection? These are, again, signs of possible domestic violence. Another way that teens can find themselves in domestic violence relationships is when a teen can be isolated from their friends. Well, this may be difficult, you might be thinking, because they're always around their friends. But also, it's very easy to start rumors in high school. It's very easy to break up friendships sometimes in high school. So therefore, teens may find themselves in a place where all of a sudden their friends don't talk to them anymore because they've been spending so much time with their partner. They may feel like their friends don't talk to them anymore, or there's a rumor going on around about their friends and they can't hang out with them anymore. This may be at the direct request of their partner, or it may be at the subtle influence of their partner, such as a partner telling their spouse, you know, there's a new rumor about your friends, and if you don't want that rumor to start about you, you shouldn't hang with them anymore. I've seen this happen several times in high schools, and the cycle begins of isolation. So when a teen becomes isolated and they feel like they can't talk to their peers and they no longer have friends, they may start to hang out with their spouses or partners even more so, giving them even more time to control where they go and who they are with. And they also may feel indebted to them because they may feel like they are the only peer they have who will spend time with them. And that teens often do not want to feel lonely. So therefore, it's important to show them that healthy relationships can include healthy friendships, being able to talk to their friends, maintain friendships, feeling safe within their friendships, making sure that they have friends who they feel they can speak with about anything. And of course, this may not be every friend, but if a teen does not have a close friend that they can engage with, this may be cause for concern to make sure that we're talking to them about what healthy friendships look like and how we can maintain those so that we can make sure that teens continue to have an outlet outside of their spouses to speak with. Also, healthy relationships look like relationships in high school where teens can engage in things that they enjoy. This may not always be involving their spouse. Therefore, if a teen suddenly drops out of a sport or an activity that they have been enjoying for some time, this again may be cause for alarm to see, hey, what's going on? You enjoyed this activity for years and now all of a sudden you don't have time for it anymore, or you don't want to engage with it anymore. A healthy relationship is one that promotes what each partner enjoys to do. And this can be within school or outside of school. Therefore, healthy relationships should be something that we are pointing out. I have gone to high schools before and spoken with students, and students have told me, I don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. Well, let's show them. Where can we find healthy relationships, even in the places that they like to look? on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on television, and reality TV. It may be hard to find, but sometimes it helps to reach the student where they are and in the outlets that they like to look, and help them to think about what's healthy to them, such as setting boundaries. What are your boundaries? Sometimes teenagers aren't quite sure what their boundaries are. They're just beginning to date and they're not sure where they want to draw their line, what's okay and what's not okay. Some things we can draw a clear line around, such as no physical violence, no forcing someone to engage in sexual behavior that they're not comfortable with and not ready for. Some things can be a little unclear for teens, such as name calling, yelling, or even subtle physical engagement, such as grabbing someone's arm or just talking really close to them. It may make them feel uncomfortable, but they may not have the wherewithal just yet to be able to identify this as domestic violence. But it can be a sign of domestic violence. So it's important to have them to understand it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say what you feel is healthy for you and what you feel is unhealthy for you. Everyone may not agree, but anyone who's going to be in a relationship together, even in high school, should be able to identify what they are okay with and what they are not okay with. And if they're not able to do that just yet, they perhaps may not be ready to date yet. And that is another topic that teenagers often find difficult. When everyone around them seems to be dating, it may be difficult for them to say, so many people like me, how can I not date? I have to date someone, and if I don't date someone, it may mean that no one wants me, and I don't want anyone to think that. So it's important to also talk to teens about self-esteem. What is their self-worth? How do they feel about themselves? How do they define that for themselves? Does that mean that they define it by how many people like them, how their friends feel about them, or is it solely based on how they feel? Often for teenagers, it's a good mix of both. But it's important that most of it comes from within. Of course, this is a hard lesson to learn, and that's why we have teenage years to go through that. But for a teen who may have particularly low self-esteem, it may make them more vulnerable to find themselves in an abusive relationship, because it may be easier to isolate them. It may be easier for them to believe that they are not wanted or they are not valid, and no one else may want to be in a relationship with them. And so if no one else wants them, then they may feel like, I need to stay in this relationship because what happens if no one else will date me? Some abusers, even in high school, will sometimes make it difficult for their spouse to date once that spouse has tried to walk away from an abusive relationship. Statistics have shown that walking away from a domestic violence relationship does not decrease the abuse. Often, it will increase the abuse. I have seen situations where teens have tried to end relationships and their partner began to stalk them, often showing up right outside of their class or outside of their school if they don't go to school together, sometimes often calling several times a day, texting several times a day throughout the school day, engaging with them heavily on social media, following them different places, threatening them, engaging with them roughly in the hallway, threatening to embarrass them in the hallway. And for a teen who just wants to keep a low profile and again not stand out to be different in a negative way from their peers, this may be difficult for them. Therefore, it's important to make sure that we support teens not just while they're in a relationship, but even after a relationship is ended. It's important to keep tabs and keep open communication lines with teens who have just ended relationships to make sure that they were able to end it smoothly, the break went well, it was a decision that they're okay with, and they're able to move on happily. This can often open up a conversation for what happened in the relationship. Why did it end? It's important for teens to be able to talk about it, because sometimes if they don't talk about it, they can sometimes find themselves in the same relationship again. So talking about a teen who has just left a relationship that was possibly unhealthy may open up the conversation for them to be aware of what signs are happening. Where could we have seen where this person might have not been a healthy choice for us? For instance, were they overly jealous? Did they not want you to hang out with your friends? Did they even have problems with you spending time with your family? These are often early signs that teens can see for an unhealthy relationship. Teens also may see signs such as warnings from past girlfriends or boyfriends, This is often a sign that teens will ignore because they feel as though this person just doesn't want me to date their ex, and that's okay. However, sometimes when we have several of the same warnings, it's important that we do pay attention and we do heed to those warnings. So it's important for us to be able to help teens to say, is this really something that's happening, or is this some type of teenage jealousy? Sometimes it's better safe than sorry. As we get ready to wrap up today, I wanted to share a scenario that was shared with me by a high school counselor. A high school counselor called and shared with me that a student had at one point became very volatile with several, a female student had become very volatile with several male students, and they could not figure out what was happening. Part of this was because the student had been in several domestic violence relationships and now was highly susceptible to wondering if someone else was going to hurt her. Sometimes when we see teens reacting in negative ways, we want to automatically think that they're being violent or something is wrong with them. It's important to address domestic violence with teens as a trauma, because it is a trauma, and sometimes it can cause adverse reactions following that traumatic experience. Therefore, if a teen comes to you and they are having behavior problems, grade problems, issues at home, not wanting to communicate, these may be signs of a teen who has been exposed to a trauma. It's important to treat this trauma as though we would any other, whether they were exposed to gun violence or a natural disaster. Domestic violence can affect teens and children much the same, so it's important that we also address it the same. Connection for Abused Women and Their Children is a domestic violence agency and one of the many places that you can go to or call throughout the nation and within the city of Chicago to talk to someone about what happens in domestic violence relationships, what happens with teens who experience this, what happens with teens who may have witnessed it at home who are now ready to date. How can we guide them into a healthy relationship? That number to contact Connection for Abused Women and Their Children, again, is 773-278-4566. Also, as we begin to wrap up, if anyone has any questions, you can call at 312-738-1060. Connection for Abused Women and Their Children has worked throughout the community for 40 years to provide services so that we can help to break the cycle of abuse. Part of helping to break the cycle of abuse is starting with the youngest of us who are dating, such as teenagers. Even looking at middle schoolers who are now beginning to engage, not necessarily in serious relationships, but just wondering, how does dating work? So, how does dating work for someone who's young? Let's review what we've talked about today. Again, we need to talk to them about the constant engagement they have. How do we manage that? How do we manage how we engage with someone throughout the day? How do we manage how we engage with someone on social media? What are our boundaries? Helping teens to set boundaries for what they feel is important and what they feel is okay. Also, to be able to give them an open line of communication, whether that's with a school counselor, a parent, a friend. They should always have someone they can go to and talk to and feel like it's a safe place where they won't be judged and they can share without any repercussions. Also, it's important to make sure when teens have left relationships that we're clear on why those relationships ended and how we can have a healthy relationship the next time. Lastly, we have to show them signs and give them tips on what a healthy relationship is, whether that means giving them visible representation, or it can just be talking to them about what's healthy and what's unhealthy for them. So, again, we are Connection for Abused Women and Their Children. We are available to talk to you at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 773-278-4566. If you would like to contact us, our information is on the screen. Thank you again, and have a great evening.